Hi, Casey here with Surrogacy Is, and we're excited to be connecting again on these necessary topics.
Yeah. So today is, don't mind our shirts. We didn't plan this, but today we are talking about finding closure and moving forward. And
I think we were on the same wavelength here.
Totally didn't. Yeah, I didn't plan this, but it's there. But this is a heavier topic, right? And it's going to cover aspects of the surrogacy journey where you in a version of this where you complete a journey and there's this experience of what now and kind of what you need to do for yourself, how you envision life after surrogacy. This is also going to touch on when surrogacy journeys don't necessarily go to the end or have a different version or a story or a closure than you thought. And so we're also going to be talking about those journeys. And naturally in this topic, grief is going to be part, grief is here in the room with us as well. That is going to be sort of a main foundation of what we're talking about when we're talking about processing and moving forward. Grief is along for that, right? So, life after surrogacy. That's me. You don't need to do that. So an unexpected journey, end to your journey. I want to start here and kind of jump right in because, Casey, you're going to have a lot more context here. When carriers are deciding, when someone's deciding, like, I want to do this, right? Like, this is a decision that feels great for me. I want to help another family. I want to become a surrogate. You're sort of mirroring into this idea, mind, body, and soul, like in a very deep and intertwined way. And you are likely envisioning this whole experience of like, this is what it's going to be like. And this is, how birth will go. And this is how my life will look like after. And so anything that disrupts that timeline or just those events in a way that is, harmful or unexpected or hurtful will carry a lot of weight. I think many of the agencies and your agency here, I imagine, Casey, there is that informed consent at the beginning that like, hey, like we don't know what's going to happen here, right? Like this is still a pregnancy. This is still like so many logistics involved, so many unpredictables. The hope and goal is a healthy pregnancy. There are versions of this that will be not that. I'm curious, Casey, if you want to like add input here, like what is the message or what is the spiel that is said when a new first timer or even someone who wants to do this again is coming back and being like, yep, I'm ready, like I'm going to do this?
Yeah, I think that the reality is there's no journey that's going to look the same each time, right? So whether you're coming back as an experienced surrogate and you're like, I got this and this is going to be easy and surely I'm going to get pregnant on the first try and surely this is going to go well. We see that every journey is different. And in that early stages, we talk a little bit about that hurry up and wait and the unexpected, what you may not be aware of, right? So I think when we're talking with the surrogates, I have a handful of stories, unfortunately, that come to mind right away, where we as experienced surrogates or first-time surrogates, we invest so much of our heart into this journey. And we're not talking 1 month, we're talking 6, 7, 8 months into this. So for the journey to come to an end, whether it be the parents don't have any more embryos, or maybe they've used their embryos and you've tried 3 times, or you get pregnant and then there's a loss of miscarriage, heartbeat not found. I think that reality is you can be told everything up front, and we're really good about explaining that, but it still hits that same way of like, this isn't fair, and this is not how I envision this to go.
Yeah, 100%. And you already touched on these, but I think for clarity's sake, there are reasons why a journey will end before completion, right? And a lot of the common ones will fall into this like medical or fertility category. Failed cycles, your intended parents running out of embryos, or maybe not necessarily having the financial means to continue various aspects of the journey that are required. Complications, this is one I hear a lot too, where like you've had your own experience of healthy pregnancies, but then you get to surrogacy and it's like your lining's not thick enough, or you have fluid, or you have fibroids, and you're like, what? Like I never dealt with any of this in my experiences, and here I am now like thinking my body, I could trust my body, and my body is like having all these things show up that are preventing me here. And there are certain considerations with surrogacy health-wise that are important in this environment, maybe more so than, like your own experience of family building, because again, in this environment, the idea is mitigating and minimizing risk as much as possible. So something even benign can pose as a risk only because with IVF, with the sensitivity of surrogacy, it's still a flag.
It adds really, yeah, it does. It adds another layer. And I think that we have situations where the surrogate goes to medical screening and her lining it isn't looking the way that the clinic would need for it. And you don't know, you've had healthy, uncomplicated pregnancies, and that's why you're here at this point, because you've been approved, your records have been approved by a clinic, right? But getting in there, or maybe your levels are all wonky and your thyroid's out of wonk and you haven't had those levels checked in a little while. I think there are so many different what if scenarios that potentially come up in these journeys. It's understanding that this isn't a guarantee and we just have to take it every step at a time. And there are those safeguards that are in place, and why we do the extensive pre-screening ahead of time, because I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. I know as a surrogate for myself, like I was eager to go. I'm like, let's do this. I would have been devastated. And so often, unfortunately, our minds have said yes. And so when our minds have said yes, we're like, what do you mean no? Like,
right.
That's not what I want to hear in this next step. So I'm glad we have this resource, because it's really nice to be able to know that if we are faced with those no's, how do we deal with that? And I'm grateful that we were able to partner with Embra Health in this way, because unfortunately we are going to hit those no's on some of these journeys. And so how do we support our surrogates to make sure that they have resources to pour into if they are hearing that now?
Totally. Yeah. And the medical and the fertility related factors, I mean, those are typically surprises, right? To your point, like you're like, I didn't even realize my thyroid, or I didn't even know this or that. But there are layers to this. It's a significant life experience, and life changes, I think, get really undervalued in terms of how much they can impact you as a person who wants to do this, right? Maybe you're having a career change. Maybe your partner is having a significant career change or just got laid off their job. Family needs. If you have a child who needs more attention or developmental support, that could be something to definitely not ignore when you're considering surrogacy. Surrogacy will take up your time, will take up a little bit of your emotional and physical responsibilities outside of other things. And so you're thinking about your family, you're thinking about financial strains. I mean, this is the big one too. Obviously, surrogacy has an amazing perk of coming with a compensation package, but Casey, your agency and many others require, a steady financial state before getting here, because we would hate for this experience to not go the way it was intended or planned and have now a new stressor in your life, which is financial, right? And then relationship changes too. These are like in your personal life. I've been there and supported a gestational carrier who, had a really traumatic experience happen in her relationship and was contemplating a divorce, and she's 6 months pregnant, and like life will just kind of do those things, right? And so you're also thinking about not necessarily like your journey ending in the way you didn't expect, but also like grieving those aspects of a journey just being so different than what you expected to, based on life and what life will do. Yeah. And then match disruptions is sort of a big category here as well. Again, you are in a relationship in surrogacy that is far different and very unique and very, very sensitive in nature. And so who your intended parents are, how that relationship goes, that could be a huge contributor or factor in how far you get in your journey, right? IPs could be, your intended parents could be withdrawing for various reasons. Maybe there's an emotional aspect, a financial aspect. They need to now stop. You've matched, and you're like, yep, we have this timeline, and embryo transfer gets canceled because they don't have the funds to continue, and that was unexpected. Or communication breakdowns may occur. Incompatibility can show up at various stages. We're all human beings, and again, in this very human, very emotionally charged experience, and it could be as simple as just a really important personality difference that breaks up a match, and that breaks up a journey, that stops it where it is. You want to speak on that, Casey? Like how you?
The reality is those situations do happen, but I always see, at least from the agency's perspective, let's say it's a personality mismatch and we're realizing it at legal, and the intended parents decide, you know what, I think we're going to need to step away and look at rematching. While nobody wants to hear that, and so much time has gone into getting to that point in the process, and for the surrogates, they're very excited. I also think that there's a reason that we're here, and then the neat thing is we get to go back to the drawing board and be able to maybe find that better fit match. Maybe there was a disalignment and understanding of what those things are. Maybe the surrogate had a different perspective and now she's changed on some things, and now we can go back to the drawing board and determine what those things are. So it's hard, but I always say when we do see a reason for a match break for unexpected reasons, or we can't make sense of it, I always look at the other side, and if we are able to rematch her or things move forward, we're able to look at, okay, well, you know what, I hate saying that it all happens for a reason, but I do think that in some instances I've seen it really shake out to be a better situation when things get interrupted and roadblocks happen. You see on the other side of it, like, okay, that's okay, and look where we're at right now. So
yeah, totally. This next paragraph is talking about why loss can be especially hard, and this seems like a given, but obviously I think what makes this unique is you are married to this version of events, you're married to this version of an experience, and so when that disrupts or changes, there is grief. That is grief. That is a loss. That is something to mourn. And I don't know if we say that out loud enough, that like, you're going to grieve this, and that's part of what happens now, and that's okay. I think for many carriers that I've spoken to that have had like abrupt match breaks, or like unfortunately have had a loss at a very early stage, or something has happened medically that has prohibited them from moving forward, it feels like a huge question mark. It feels very confusing. It feels very like, why me, and disappointing, and a lot of shame or feelings about your body, and like, why did my body do this? Like, it did it before. I don't get it. And so you're grieving all of that, and it's sort of a hidden grief because we don't call it grief, but I want to call it grief. It's just making sure that the realization is there that this is a loss. It's a loss of a stage of your life that you assume is going to be there. It's a loss of an experience that you were so hopeful about. It's all of those things. Surrogacy is often years in the making. I don't know one carrier that's like, I learned about it last month and here I am. Like, it's not really common. Like, you've thought about, in a way or two, you've thought about this idea of giving to others. And then maybe that's advanced to giving to others in this way of like helping them build their families. And then it's maybe advanced to like, okay, surrogacy, is this right for me? So you've spent time here, likely. Like, this isn't something that most carriers are just like, I'll just do it and it's fine, and I haven't really invested too much into it. So when it ends prematurely, it feels deep, right? Like, I imagine and I hear about it feeling like a very deep. It also affects the identity that is sort of being built when you're aspiring to become a gestational carrier. Being a surrogate is a significant role in identity, and it becomes a big part of most women's, how they think about themselves and how they position themselves in the world. It's like, yeah, I'm a surrogate. I helped a family. Like, a really cool title, by the way, to have, because not a lot of people have it at all. But that identity shift occurs with this loss, right? If a journey is prematurely ending, it's sort of like now gone that you could be or have the opportunity to be this type of person, and this type of person that helps others and gives to the world in this way. And that's heavy too. Yeah. I'll talk a little bit more about the identity aspect of surrogacy, but it is a beautiful thing to be proud of in terms of when you look at like yourself and who you are. And so when that's gone and you really wanted it sucks. It hurts.
So, and I like that you're saying you can categorize this as loss, because it is, right? It is that you're mourning something you envision you thought you were going to have, and maybe you aren't. So when you're talking with these women and they're dealing with this grief and they're sharing just how vulnerable this felt to them, what would be those next things that you're offering to them to say, okay, how do we give it the space it needs? And then what next? Like, how do they overcome that next thing?
Yeah. I mean, you're a slide or two ahead. But we will talk about, I mean, like in any other setting, when you're talking about grief and loss, you have to process through that experience. You have to process through that emotion. You have to understand what it needs. Mm-hmm. And so with surrogacy, you're committing, like, it's your mind, your time, a stage of your life. And so when that's gone, you kind of have to like sit in the yuck for a little bit to determine, okay, well, what now then? Right. And like, and how do I understand what I'm feeling? And how do I honor what I'm feeling? And how do I also honor the fact that I was even willing and wanting of this? Because not everybody does want to do this or can do this or emotionally happens. And there will be some tips in here on how to do that.
Great.
Okay, let's keep going. So healthy closure strategies. I thought it was slide over, but it's right here. So the first one is naming and validating the loss. So like you had mentioned, and I'm saying, like, this is loss. I have no problem calling things what they are. And I think it gets confusing when you don't have a container for the experience, and ending a journey prematurely or experiencing a loss or a medical a situation that prohibits you to move forward. Like, this is a loss. This is now a loss. This is something to grieve. So naming and validating that, understanding that this is a very hard thing, like many other hard things, and you have to give it the same attention, love, space that you do other things. Allowing yourself to grieve even if others don't understand it. So I've also experienced that, where like some people in your life will be like, well, maybe it wasn't meant to be, right? Or like the comments, right? Like, you know, it's better off. Like, now you could focus on your children, or, you know, whatever these lovely things are that people say, and other people won't get it. And maybe Casey, you could speak to this, but I feel like there's a very internal experience here with surrogacy, especially for you, the carrier, or the aspiring carrier, that like, no one's going to understand what it felt like to even get to this point to want to do this. And no one's going to understand what it remotely feels like when that's no longer available to you.
Yeah. I've had to talk with surrogates when they're like, what now? You know, I'm not done. I don't want to be done. Yeah. You're telling me I'm medically disqualified, but what now? You know, and I find them investing their heart and resources into learning everything there is to maybe working in the industry. It's right. Like, it's refocusing those desires that you still have, because you still have those, and focusing them on something that it's going to fulfill that void that is missing that you feel there, because it is hard to explain. I mean, you sign up for this thing, and then you've invested this time and your heart into it. And when somebody tells you no, you feel like that's out of your control. It's like, I want to be able to make that no answer. I want to be able to make that decision. And when that's taken from you, you are left with, well, what next? What now?
Yeah, totally. Rituals for closure, like in any healing process, like in any grieving process, you want to create a task, like create a physical, like behavioral component to like processing what's happening. So, you know, in our lens therapeutically, it's always going to be a great idea to journal or to kind of put your thoughts on paper about what's happening, what you're experiencing. Honestly, it helps you get what's happening in your mind a little bit better when you see it in words and write it out. Symbolic acts are also extremely powerful. So I've heard so many cool versions of this, but like I've heard a version from a gestational carrier where her journey ended for medical reasons prematurely, and she still had this innate need to nurture. And so, you know, we thought about planting something in honor of this experience, in honor of these parents, in honor of this, this life and version of a child that everyone was really excited about. And so planting something, creating a keepsake, channeling that nurture, channeling that, like, I wanted to care and I wanted to do something powerful into a different area is a great example. Creating a keepsake. This is also sort of like a memory of the experience. I hate to hear when gestational carers or surrogates just like want to be done. It's a coping skill, right? It's like, I don't want to think about it anymore. I just want to pretend like it didn't happen. And I'm like deleting everything and all that. And it's a coping skill. It is one way for your grief to try to get through it. It's not like try to survive through it. Another way will be put it all into something beautiful, something memorable, something special. And then that gets put away, whether it's like a little photo album of like what it felt like to be a surrogate for 10 weeks, or like what it felt like to have this experience with the intended parents, or like keep a photo of them if that relationship was good. So whatever that could look like, just creating a keepsake. Also, writing letters to the IPs. This is sometimes a useful component when you've had this established relationship. Like sometimes, again, like from the meeting of your IPs to embryo transfer, that could be like a year. Like that could be a while. It doesn't happen like the next month often. And so you have this relationship established with these other people, and you're not only mourning surrogacy, but for some, you're mourning that relationship because you're like, this is where it ends, right? Like we don't have any other reason to connect, or maybe emotionally it's too hard to continue connecting or staying in touch. So either writing to them, and this is, writing in a sense where you're processing. Maybe you share it with them, maybe you don't, maybe it's just for you. And then also the same act for yourself, writing a letter to pre-surrogacy you, thinking, gosh, like, I know you were so excited about this. And like, I'm still so proud that you even did everything you wanted to and needed to get to this point. And I need you to know that, like, I don't want you to regret this decision, or like whatever the words are that come out, that who you were before this just needed to hear.
Yeah. I also think loss and grief isn't even in a journey ending, but maybe it ending in the way that you weren't anticipating. So maybe that relationship that you had hoped for, that delivery that you were hopeful for, the parents being there, and them, you getting to see them hold their baby for their first time. Like for me, that was a special moment. And I actually just talked with one of our amazing surrogates where the parents didn't make it in time for delivery, and how she was grieving that because in her mind, she'd already imagined what that experience would look like. And the path got changed and it wasn't in her control. And she felt like she was grieving this experience of like, well, I didn't get to be able to see them in that moment holding their baby. And it wasn't until a day or 2 days later that they got to see them come together. And so she still was in that process of, I didn't get that. So I think loss and grief can also be, these are good tools for even that, right?
Yeah, 100%. The reframing is also very helpful cognitively, because to your point, like things will not go to plan. We know that. We want to know better, and we want to think, no, but this is a good plan. We've thought about everything, and then it still won't do that, right? So the power of reframe is like a secret weapon, I think, cognitively for anything, everywhere, in every situation. But the shifting, because I think what happens in many women's experiences in surrogacy is if something goes wrong, you think it's your fault. It's your failure, right? It's your body that your lining wasn't thick enough. Like your body didn't hold this embryo through to viability. Like it feels very person-centered and personal. And so the reframing of some of those really negative I statements, or feeling like you failed, to something like, you know what, I made a choice, I faced a circumstance, and this likely happened to protect my health, my life path. This likely happened for a reason that I won't understand. And I'm going to find a way to be okay with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to feel sad about it, and I will also find a way to be okay with that. Our internal self-talk is so crazy powerful to how our body responds to us, and our mind and our body work together so intuitively. And so we really do undervalue the power of internal self-talk and the thoughts that we're having to what our body feels and how it operates. And so the reminder here is that part of grief will open up that window of those types of inner dialogues that feel really heavy and negative. And there has to be an intentionality to move away from those thoughts into a space, not positive. It doesn't have to go positive. That's unrealistic, right? You're not going to be like, I'm so proud of myself right after you've had a failed transfer. Like it might be harder to get there, but you can say, you know, I had no control here, and I'm going to make myself believe that this was to protect me. And I'm just going to stay right there until it feels a little better for me. And it will, because your body will be like, cool, there's nothing scary in that. I don't have to turn on my fight. Like, you're not telling me we're bad and we're awful. So if we're just sitting in something, I'll help you sit through it, and I'll help you move through it too.
Yeah. And I know I there's versions of, as the support person, as the agency, as the journey coordinator, when you are helping and talking with that surrogate that you've built this relationship with, and helping her understand it isn't her fault, right? Because she wants to go and blame herself and what could I've done differently? And it's like, well, you did everything right. You know, every the mid-cycle scan, all of the labs came back, your lining, everything was right. It was perfect. And unfortunately, sometimes these things happen. But I've even had to, you know, just teach our team not to come in from this place of like, we'll just try it again, you know, because the reality is the surrogate needs to come to that conclusion on her own. And sometimes having somebody say, it's okay, it wasn't meant to be, from the outside saying that to somebody who's dealing with that grief, I've realized that's not what they want to hear. They don't want to hear it. They want to come to that in their own way if they decide and when they decide that. But just setting that stage and letting them know and reminding them how amazing they are, and reminding them of all the variables that we can with certainty say, your clinic, you know, did that mid-cycle scan, your lining was great, your labs came back perfect, your levels were exactly where they needed to be. So in those moments, we're reminded of the truths, and so that we don't allow ourselves to go down those rabbit holes of what could we have done differently, and it was all of our fault, you know, and because reality, there's so many variables in all of this. So
100%.
Yeah.
And there will be a level of this where, again, with grief, everyone has their own experience of it. Everyone has their own layers and levels to it. And also everyone has had their own life before this, that has had their own stuff. For someone, for example, who's maybe had a pregnancy loss before and has come to surrogacy, and the reason their journey is ending due to a pregnancy loss, that might be a wound that you've already seen up close that is now again surfacing, and that might just be hitting you way harder than you thought, right? And so hearing that everything went well, and that, you know, the validation, sometimes those super helpful, can maybe not be what is needed at the stage of your grief. And that's where we're thoroughly talking about therapeutic support. Therapeutic support, working with a mental health provider, especially one who understands third-party reproduction. I think that's key, because this isn't just, you know, you had a blip in your pregnancy. There are layers and nuance to this pregnancy, this blip, this type of loss, this experience before, during, and after. But to also recognize that we are talking about grief and we are talking about loss. So naturally, you will have people in your life that are going to be amazing to talk to for some of that initial layer of support. And if that's not moving the needle at all for you, then the therapeutic aspect is where you go first. Where you go next, but for some, honestly, where you go first, right? Like, lay this out. Let us help you understand how you're processing your grief, what is showing up in your grief. And that way you have an understanding of, here's what this is going to look like, instead of, I'm drowning in quicksand and I'm not going to know how to get out.
What a special tool. I mean, I was a surrogate 16 years ago, and so you had your psychological session, but the amount of support, and I actually don't think a lot of agencies even have it as much as we do, where the surrogate has access monthly from the time that she's legally cleared through the pregnancy and postpartum. But I think that the tool that is here is really just to add an additional, we got you as an agency, to really lean in and say, not every journey looks the same. There are different things that are going to come up. Let us support you in the excitement, but also in the potential grief that might come from this too.
Yeah. And it's also just I think it's such a comforting hug to know that that's been thought out for you as well. Like, not only, not every agency is having a readily accessible mental health channel of support. And I think it's such a gift to know that maybe you won't need it. And if you do, it's been already planned out for you to have it, and it's immediate, and it's there, and it's yours, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like there's the least resisting path exists here. Like, it's not like, oh, okay, let us help you find someone. And here's some numbers to call. It's nope. Well, we're calling, how it works, but like, you'll call me, Casey, on certain cases and be like, this weekend or Monday. And I'm like, yep, I could do this. And it's happening, and it's available, and it's readily available. But especially for these harder aspects of a journey, it's the best tool. I'm biased and I'll say that, but it is.
I agree. I mean, and that's something that we flex all the time, just having a resource like Embra Health, and you're building relationship. So yeah. Embra Health, when we do our psychological evaluations with the surrogate and her partners or her support person, that you're establishing that relationship. Yeah. You're excited in that very early stage as a surrogate, and it's easy then to feel safe.
Right.
And to continue that dialogue, because it's great when it's wonderful, but then it's also really nice to have that tool when it's not, or right. when things are just kind of veering more than you anticipated. So yeah. That's my biggest takeaway. I hope, if anything, from the surrogates that get to see this, it's just that we value so much that you have that support. And that's why it's there. It's not a requirement, but I hope that every surrogate takes every session that she can, because the reality is, even when things are great, it's still nice to have somebody to connect with and be able to talk about those wins too, right?
And I'll say, from our end, we have a really strong initiative to maintain that same clinical provider for you. So you're seeing that same face. It's not a different person. We do our best, and we have tried. And successfully have made it so where, that person you met at the beginning that was asking you all those invasive questions about your life, is going to be the person that will pop in and check on you as well. And so you've met them, you've had a conversation with them, you've felt a level of comfort, and it's not going to be this stranger. It's someone who actually knows a lot about you already. And here's this situation, and let's get into this. Like, how are we gonna, what do you need? So that's something that I also wanted to note too, that like, you'll have a familiar face with us in terms of support.
It's huge.
Okay. Now we're kind of transitioning into life after a completed surrogacy journey, right? So again, grief and loss, this is a huge topic. We could talk about this for hours, but I do want to segment this into these specific two experiences. After surrogacy, after a completed journey, I think there's a really strange transition here. Strange is the word, because it's hard to track down. It's never going to feel the same. It's never going to feel like identical to another one. Strange is the word to me, because it's also like, I don't know
what. Now what?
Yeah, it's just like bizarre. Like, and maybe you thought a certain thing and it's not, but then you're okay with it, and it's just a lot, right? So why is this transition so strange? I think, and what I'm identifying here is surrogacy is just a very intense, purpose-driven experience, right? It's so intentional from like beginning, middle, end. If you're a carrier, you're thinking about this a lot. A lot of your life will revolve around your surrogacy journey, whether you want it to or not. It naturally is a big, significant, important thing. And so when it ends, which is really marked by a very abrupt situation, which is birth. It is abrupt. It is like, sometimes you get a good level of warning, but sometimes you don't. And then, birth is this intense thing. And then baby's here and it's over. Like, it's just quick, and it's just a lot. And then you're done. and then it's over. And so I think there's so many factors to this, but the level of intensity, how abrupt birth is, and then just the calm after the storm can feel really confusing. It's a sudden shift from the communication dynamics with everyone too, right? When you've completed a surrogacy journey, how you talk to the intended parents might shift, how your clinic or agency's involvement in your life and communication wise might shift. And everything is sort of like, all right, let's start the transition to this normal life. But life doesn't feel normal after surrogacy for many people. And like, there is a new normal, but what is that? There's also this physical aspect of the hormonal, physical, and emotional recovery that is associated with physical active birth, all while trying to adjust to like a new rhythm. It's a very different rhythm because in this stage of a pregnancy or a journey, you are caretaking a child, usually a newborn baby, and in a surrogacy journey that's completed, you're not. And so especially for that first time, your mind and body are going to be very confused about what to do, how to feel. And that's sort of natural to birth, period. But obviously there's a layer here with surrogacy. What do you want to add, Casey, as to what makes this transition feel so confusing?
I think that when I can speak from my own experience, and then in really talking with surrogates over the several years that we've been doing this, I had built such a close relationship with my intended parents personally, leading up to those days of delivery. We were having dinner, a couple of times a week. We were walking on the beach, and when baby was here, they were going to focus on baby, of course, right? And I mean, little G was figuring out what his sleep routine was going to be, his eating routine. And so they were getting little to no sleep. And I think in those moments, realizing that I had built something special with my intended parents, and then now it was done, it felt like there was a chapter that had closed that I wasn't really thinking about. Or I've talked with surrogates where they hoped for a relationship and that didn't pan out. And now you've delivered and you're dealing with this grief of, well, the pregnancy didn't go the way I wanted. And yes, this beautiful, healthy baby is here and in their parents' arms. And that's exactly what I set out for. But you're still grieving a process that it's done and maybe it didn't look the way you wanted to. Or you have those women who get to sleep through the night, those first several nights. And I get on the phone with them and they're telling me that they feel great. And when can I do this again? And this pregnancy was easier than every other pregnancy. But the reality is like, you've just did this very big thing. So I think celebrating that and acknowledging that and just being in that space of being proud of yourself, right? And then taking that next step. But it's hard because for everybody, I think we all deal with it a little differently. And it really just depends on how that journey ended.
Yeah, 100%. That's a big telltale sign. What you're also noticing in that experience is just the shifting of identity and roles, right? Because you are now no longer a surrogate, right? You've been a surrogate, you've thought about being a surrogate, and now I think in your heart, you're always a surrogate, but you're not physically, a surrogate anymore. So you might have this loss associated with this mission, this purpose, this like huge thing that felt bigger than life and that felt fulfilling. And it's now gone. It's now no longer this like shining light on you anymore. That also affects, and I think we spoke about it in another setting, but like, yeah, the environment of surrogacy where like everyone's checking in on you and like you're getting a lot of validation in surrogacy. You are like superwoman. Like everyone's not afraid to say like how incredible you are and like how brave you're being. And, everyone's, very, very concerned about you. And that's a nice feeling. We don't have to pretend like that's not.
Yeah.
And then when a journey ends, that's not really
It's shifted at that point. It absolutely has. And the other thing glaring reality is that you've delivered a pregnancy. Your body is going to do that hormone dump that it does after delivery that we all are very aware of. those circumstances, being aware and making sure that you aren't slipping into having a postpartum depression and the anxiety that might come with that. And those things your body is still going through that hormone balance, trying to get back to what normal is after pregnancy. Whether you're a surrogate or not, your body is still going to do all of those things that it was going to do because you've just did this big thing in pregnancy.
100%. And you're going through that physical experience postpartum. You're kind of losing this like emotional landscape of support, which is, differing or changing after a journey. Friends and family, I think, are a big component of this too, because a lot of people will just not get like the magnitude of what you just did or understand it. Yeah. And I've heard a lot of stories about like comments and things people have said that have just really not been great. Again, like, oh, aren't you glad that's over? Or, at least now you could focus. I don't know why I always remember that one, because it's like the one I hate, which is like, now you could focus on your own kids. And it's like, we're always focusing on our own kids. That's never going away. But, family and friends might not get it. Maybe your household expects you after birth to kind of go back into routine, right? Like your husband's like, cool, like, when are you starting your work? Or kids are like, great, I want to sign up for soccer now. And like, everyone's just like, business as usual, and not realizing, or maybe not understanding that like, no, I need the 4 to 6 weeks. Like I need to, and maybe, and I think for many carriers, you're also not realizing that you do need that. Like you should not be running back to normal life, right? Like there is no baby to caretake, but there is a whole body and a human that needs healing and rest and love. And that's you, right? You still have that responsibility. It's just not, it's not out, it's back in. And so taking the time off, slowing life down, people should be bringing food over to your house. The casserole should be coming in. Like all of that needs to stay as is. It does not matter if this is a surrogacy or not. And there could be a lot of great discussions that happen preemptively with your family and friends to let them know that like, I get this is kind of a bizarre situation and maybe there aren't any rules about this, but here are some of my expectations. I will need to heal and I will need that support. And I know that there isn't like a baby here to like make it fun to come visit me, but I need you to still come visit me, right? And check on me. Yeah. And then this also, what I hear a lot too, is just a sense of emptiness that can kind of linger around post delivery. And when you're home, despite having completed a journey, maybe that you were, really proud or connected with, because, your IPs could be on a flight like 6 days, 7 days later with this baby. And maybe that's when you start to really feel it, like, wow, they're leaving me. Like they're gone and they live in a different country. Like I'm never going to see them. And that could start to really, at various points, start to feel heavy. Emptiness is something I hear, but yeah, I don't know if you have anything else here to add, Casey. Just this experience of like loss.
Yeah. It's like, now what now? Right. I know it's so funny because I find that for so many professionals in the industry, if they've been a surrogate, I think that's the thing that they turn to is like, I have to be in this industry. I want to know more. Wow. I want to work in it, or I want to be a surrogate again, because I think there is that now what, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative, but it's like that void that you're realizing, this was all consuming and it was something that brought me joy and filled my cup personally. How do I continue to fill that cup? And now what? Like, now what? What do I do?
And I want to add too, that there is this other side of it where completing a journey could feel like grief and loss, but in a way where it's like, I'm so happy that's over. Yeah. And that could also be the very valid experience of someone who goes through this very intense thing and is now like, I need to close this chapter. Like I need to heal. And there can be many reasons why that feels the way that it feels, but I don't want to do this again, or I don't want to, and I'm really proud of myself, and I need to find a different purpose.
Yeah.
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 So transition strategies for after a completed journey will look similar. But obviously you want to give your space for reflection. I think I'm grateful that there's like this period of time before a surrogate who's completed a journey can become a surrogate again, because I think there is that like what if zone that you're like, I need to do something, like I'm going to do this again. And thankfully there's time that is required before you have to do it again, to again let your body and mind just process the whole thing, right? Like let yourself fully sit with this experience, whether it was how you wanted it to go, whether it was different. Let your body kind of come back to a baseline. I mean, we as women, we really underestimate how long it takes for our body to kind of find its baseline again after birth. And again, this is after birth. Doesn't necessarily mean having a biological child or not. It's the birthing experience that knocks us over and totally disrupts the system. And there is a huge amount of time designated to finding a new balance, and we need to honor that. Staying connected with the experience. So if you do have this type of relationship with your intended parents where connection is agreed upon and it's what everyone wants, I mean, I think that's the most beautiful way to like heal and keep that process of grief sort of at bay, so that yes, you are feeling like the sadness of it, and you're also getting these updates and you're feeling kind of these moments of joy along the way. And then you're also honoring the space that you need for some of the journeys where connection is not going to be either available or something that you're interested in. Maybe it's not staying connected to your intended parents, but it's maybe diving into the relationships in your life that do bring you some more fulfillment and joy that can help fill some of that space for you, right? Marking the completion. So again, personal rituals, memory books or scrapbooking. These are like, there's so many fun things that you can do in journeys now to like honor what's going on, honor the experience. You as a surrogate have your own version of this experience. And I always like to tell that like gestational carriers, obviously you want to do all these things that really help your parents feel connected, but like you also get to have, this is also yours. Like this is also you and your life experience and something that you will go through in your own personal way. So if there are things that you can do for yourself that help you build a memory here, that help you like make sure that this is something that is always honored, then do that. And maybe that's separate from what you do for the intended parents, and that's good. And then, you know, gatherings, I hear such cool stories, and I love that there's no rules, but like I've had some of the stories where the gestational carrier will have like a sero shower. And it's kind of this idea where like these women come and celebrate her for doing this amazing thing. And it's not a baby shower. It's not it's not that, but it's just women coming together to celebrate her and the fact that she was willing to do this. Maybe after birth, you kind of create a day where that's what the day that you get to hold the space for your journey, right? And maybe it's not the day of birth, the day that you gave birth, but maybe it's the day you get home, or maybe it's the day that your intended parents and that child leaves, and that's an important, significant day for you. That's the closure day. So also kind of identifying where and how you could celebrate and honor yourself for what you did. Rebuilding your daily identity. This is going to take time. This is like a period hard thing to do post birth anyway. Like, and I have an almost 3-year-old, and I feel like I'm barely climbing out of. I'm like, sometimes I want to be like, I just had a baby, and I'm like, I can't say that because he's almost 3, but it feels like that, right? So like, it takes time to like again build, understand, and like process who you are and who you want to be, and how surrogacy fits there. But maybe this is when you explore new goals or hobbies, or you like do something else and kind of put some of your energy into finding meaning and purpose elsewhere. Maybe you redirect that back into family building, to your point, Casey, and you're like very clear that like, I want to be involved in this world, and I want to help. And then last point here I'm identifying is just acknowledging changes in self-perception. It's normal to see yourself differently after surrogacy. I would say it's normal to see yourself differently after giving birth, because again, that's an experience in a woman's life that really just changes everything on a molecular level. And so if you're having a hard time, or if you're kind of like, oh, I'm different now, and I didn't expect to be. But like, maybe you're taking inventory of your life and you're like, I don't like that anymore. And I need to do something about that. And I need more of me in here. Like that is a very normative experience post-birth and definitely post-surrogacy. Anything you want to add?
Well, I think these are good points, and we do with the agency. There's a birth plan that happens, and you do that with your journey coordinator, where we ask all these questions about what does this look like during the laboring, during the birth, and after the birth, and then we have the surrogate and the intended parents do a group session with Embra Health with you guys. And I think that's an opportunity to have that conversation again, but just leaning into these opportunities for great tools to help you guys understand that there are things that you may not even be thinking about, but lean in, and it's okay to ask those questions, because I think having the tools prepared and ready to go are just a value add.
Yeah. And obviously the therapeutic component is there too. So with Surrogacy Is, you have those allotted check-ins post-birth and postpartum. And so the idea and the hope is that we've touched base throughout your experience, and we're there to touch base with you after. And, you know, whether it's positive, whether you want to just talk about it, which we love to hear about it, if you need some resourcing or guidance, or if you're kind of at the end of your journey and you're like, I don't even know how I feel about that. Like, that is the space to come in and kind of help process. But also, you know, in our role, we're guiding you. We're letting you know here, like, here's what I would look into now. And like, here's, you know, if it's mental health support, it's like, here are what we're recommending as continued support for you. So you'll have a guide. You'll have some level of guidance from every position, every point. And I think I'm able to say this, that like after birth, your relationships, at least with the agencies, with this agency and with your mental health support, don't shift right away. Maybe your intended parent relationship has dynamics that shift, but all of the rest of us are still here.
Yeah. Probably more than, I mean, at some points, a lot, right? It's so crucial that our team is here, not just, okay, congratulations, you've delivered, best of luck. It's like, you've now, first of all, you've done something so special that you are in a special club, I always say, right? There are a select few women in this world who have done this, who understand exactly what you mean when you share those special moments or those struggles or things that you've overcome. And that will continue forevermore. And now you have these people that are in your corner celebrating you and picking up the phone and having a conversation with you.
Yep.